We've been hearing for years them trying to say that it causes lung cancer, and we say, really, that's interesting because you can't even show us one case of cancer being caused by cannabis use alone.
You definitely have to do it moderately because it does paralyze the cilia, but if it's not radioactive, you're probably not going to get cancer from it.
Smoking can be harmful because of the proper use of smoke.
Not as a result of anything in the cannabis plant, but because they're intaking heated plant matter into their lungs.
People said, well, you don't know, we haven't been smoking it long enough. Look what happened with cigarettes. We've had about 4 decades, or more than 4 decades of experience. If this was going to show up, it should have shown up by now.
Finally, a study came out just in the last month verifying that cannabis smoke does not cause cancer. It's different than nicotine. And the elements in the tobacco smoke do cause cancer, and the elements in the marijuana don't.
There's no cases of marijuana-only smokers getting brown lung syndrome. There's no cases of marijuana-only smokers getting emphysema. Strange for a plant that's so dangerous. How come none of that?
Marijuana is as bad for you or worse than tobacco? Impossible. If they had the evidence, they'd be putting emaciated bodies or emphysema, lung cancer, black lungs, they would be parading them throughout the media. They don't have one. Yet people somehow or other think that it might cause the same thing.
In fact, if you look at the straight deaths from substances, a different type of picture starts to appear. The #1 killer in the country? It beat out AIDS, heroin, crack, cocaine, alcohol, car accidents, fire, and murder combined. Tobacco.
That's a nasty, dirty thing to say, son. A lovely, pure white cigarette causing cancer. It gets me right here.
With an average of 430,000 deaths per year, considering it's a #1 killer, it's interesting to know that tobacco receives government subsidies and is grown with radioactive fertilizer.
Now get out there and sell cigarettes!
#2 on the list? If we don't include poor diet and physical inactivity, with well over 85,000 deaths a year, alcohol. As we look much further down the list, there are others that may surprise you. Caffeine comes in with 1 to 10,000 deaths a year. And some of our most popular pain relievers, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs such as aspirin, still make an appearance with over 7,500 deaths annually. Where does marijuana lie in this? What kind of staggering number do we find?
I don't know, 50,000?
250,000?
300,000?
For marijuana, I'd probably say then 80,000.
I would say it would be hundreds of billions.
Get ready for it. Here it comes.
There are no deaths from cannabis use anywhere. You can't find one.
In 10,000 years of known use of marijuana, there's never been a single death attributed to marijuana. There's 400,000 deaths in America alone every year that are directly attributed to tobacco.
I've heard that you have to smoke something like 15,000 joints in 20 minutes to get a toxic amount of delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol. I challenge anybody to do that.
And even in the animal studies where people have loaded the animals up with doses that would be hundreds of times what a human could possibly be exposed to, no, the animals don't die. The LD50 seems to be astronomical.
I mean, you can die from ingesting too much aspirin. You can die from ingesting too much coffee.
The drug warriors who say we have to protect society, save these people, are being just a little bit disingenuous.
Not one university or medical facility has ever recorded a single death directly attributed to marijuana. But never mind that. There's other problems, other reasons to fear it. Take addiction, for example. There are more kids in addiction clinics for marijuana than any other substance. This must mean that marijuana is the most addictive substance today.
It's undoubtedly true that there are more teenagers and kids in treatment for marijuana than all the other drugs combined. What the DEA never tells you is why that's true.
A kid is caught possessing or smoking marijuana. He's taken to court. He's given a choice. Either you some horrible penalty, or you go to a treatment center. Obviously chooses to go to treatment, and goes to treatment there, he's considered an addict.
But then the DEA gets to point to that stat and say, look at all these kids in treatment for marijuana. God, it must be because today's marijuana is not the marijuana that your parents were smoking.
As far as I understand, only 3% of the people in treatment for marijuana are there voluntarily. The other 97% were told to by their guardian or told to by a judge. So you can choose between jail or treatment. And a lot of people choose treatment.
It provides no basis for speaking about addiction. Anybody who is at all sophisticated about marijuana would rate them the way two researchers were asked to rate drugs in order of addiction. Nicotine was 1, alcohol was 2, then heroin, then cocaine, then coffee, and then marijuana. There may have been a couple of other drugs, but marijuana was at the very bottom, below coffee.
This narcotic, unlike the opiates, the synthetics, and cocaine, is non-addictive.
What do you mean by non-addictive?
By non-addictive, it is meant that the user of marijuana, when deprived of the drug, will not experience the agonies of withdrawal. It is habitual, but its use can be discontinued.
Then what is its danger?
It's used as a scapegoat for covering up underlying problems in people, especially young people. Here I am, don't ignore me.
If you use marijuana on a daily basis for a year or so, and you stop using it, you're going to notice some differences, but nothing like the kind of withdrawal people will experience in withdrawing from either tobacco or heroin.
But why would the government and the DEA want to put a statistic like that out there? We'll learn more about that later. The gateway theory.
Is marijuana a gateway drug?
Yes, I think it is.
You haven't...
I don't exactly know why, but I know it is.
It opens a doorway to other drugs.
It makes you want to experience more.
It makes you feel good.
Yeah.
People want to experience something else and, you know, have I guess, more dreams.
Its greatest danger lies in the fact that it is a stepping stone to the harder drugs, such as morphine and heroin.
That's why there are people that want to legalize marijuana. They figure if they can get the young people in this country onto hard drugs, they can destroy your generation, or in this generation.
You know, in the days of Harry Anslinger, it was called the stepping stone hypothesis. If you stepped on this stone, marijuana, you were bound and determined to go on to the next stone, which would be one of the so-called hard drugs.
Every time it's been studied and looked at and so on, they have never ever found that there's certainly nothing in marijuana that makes you want to go to anything else.
There is no inherent psychopharmacological property of the drug which pushes one toward another drug.
I'll smoke a joint. I want a bag of chips and fucking junk food. I don't want to go out and get ripped.
I drink alcohol. That's my drug of choice. It could be said I started on milk. I mean, this is crazy. If I use marijuana, why does that automatically make me a candidate to black tar heroin? It's a nonsensical argument.
In fact, only 1 out of every 104 marijuana users use cocaine, and less than 1 use heroin.
The black market throws the dealers of soft drugs together with the dealer of hard drugs.
So if you have a black market, and you have a dealer that's dealing in marijuana and LSD and everything else, and the dealer might say to you, hey, you want to try something stronger? Well, in that sense, because of the black market, because of prohibition, people may be more susceptible to seeing these other drugs and being willing to try these other drugs.
And so what you see is that there is a gateway effect, but it's a gateway effect caused by prohibition and the blending of the hard and soft drug markets.
Where does this leave us? Oh, wait. What about laziness? You will be useless to society if you use marijuana. But if that's true, well, there are about 50 million people who smoke marijuana in America, and over half of the Canadian population who've tried it. And yet, both societies seem to flourish. And just look who some of these people are.
Stephen Jobs developed Apple Computers smoking pot. Ted Turner developed CNN News smoking pot. Still smokes a joint every day. You go through every musician you like, from the Rolling Stones to the Beatles to Led Zeppelin, they all smoke pot.
Snoop Dogg, Willie Nelson.
Come on, Bill Clinton, he didn't inhale, man. He didn't inhale, yeah. Don't be so naive.
Virtually every presidential candidate has now copped to using marijuana at some time in his or her life.
A few times in the Army, I tried marijuana. It was not a significant part of my life.
I had a senior law enforcement official tell me that in